Morning, Jameson.
Good morning.
Good to see you again. What is this? How many times have we recorded in person? Is this the third one?
That sounds about right. We might have done a few remote interviews as well.
Yeah, it's a very different setup from the first time, where it was just me with my little trolley.
Yeah, to be fair, you were the first person that ever actually brought like professional equipment. And I was like, who is this guy who's flying thousands of miles to set up like a professional studio in my home?
Well, it wasn't as professional as this. And we didn't have producer Danny. We didn't have Jeremy. Did it all on my own. We should tell that story. I think we've told it before. Tell it again for people that don't know. So that was my third ever show. That was, when was it, Danny?
December 2017.
So it's 5 years ago. My third episode. So I was inspired to make the podcast by this guy, Rich Roll, who did all his interviews in person. So I was like, I'm going to do them all in person. So I did my first one when I was in LA with Luke Martin. Then I was in the UK and I did it with
Coin Trader Nick.
And then this it's a famous picture of you. You know the picture. We'll have to flash that up. I see this dude on Twitter with this huge beard, a massive gun, and a Make Bitcoin Great Again hat. And I was like, I need to interview this guy. So I just went on your website and I emailed you, and I can't remember the email. I wonder if we could find it.
Oh, I'm sure I can find it. I have
really?
everything, yeah.
Oh, we should dig that out. But I'm sure it was something along the lines of, hi, I've launched a podcast. Can I come and interview you? I'll fly from the UK and can you take me to shoot a gun? And I turn up at your house and there are fucking guns everywhere. How many guns would there have been?
Oh, dozens.
Yeah. And bear in mind, I'd never seen a gun before. And so you took me shooting. We made a podcast. Got some barbecue. I should tell that story as well. It's only me talking about it. Sorry, I know I'm interviewing Jameson. I was a vegan at the time because my mum, I got to get the dates right. But anyway, I went vegan. And you took me to this barbecue place, and I was in there thinking, fucking hell, I can't. How do I turn around to this guy with big guns and Bitcoin and say I'm a vegan? Can I have some potato without? God, I couldn't even have the salad.
I'm sure there were a couple of options, but I had to take you to a real, authentic, hole-in-the-wall barbecue shack in North Carolina.
Well, that was the day I stopped being a vegan because I was like, well, I can't do this, and I was like, actually, this tastes good. Actually, do you know what really I remember from that? Do you remember there was an old guy in there I was talking to?
I can't find the full picture, but it was this one, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah. You got to find the one with the gun, though.
Yeah. You can definitely find the one, Peter Thiel actually put me and Vitalik in his presentation at Bitcoin 2022.
So you don't remember the old guy in there?
Vaguely, not really.
So I was chatting to this old guy in there, and he was like, where are you from, boy? I was like, I'm from Bedford. It's near London. And he was chatting away, and I was like, I remember saying to him, like, oh, have you ever been? And he said something along the lines of, I've never left the county. It wasn't
about right.
I haven't left the state. He'd never left the county. Oh, there we go. Look at that, man. What a fucking badass. Although you do look like somebody who would have gone to the Capitol building on January the 6th.
Yeah, it's a funny story how that all worked out, right? Is that things take a life of their own, and the fact that I did this as a satirical video on request for someone, nobody knows that anymore. Even you probably don't know that. No, I did this for Bitcoin Car Talk. Way back in the day.
Was that Mike in Space?
Yeah, Mike in Space.
Mike in Space, yeah.
Yeah, and so I did this way over the top, hilarious sort of gunned up Bitcoin maximalist video, and he put it in the intro to Bitcoin Car Talk, one of those episodes. And of course, people took screenshots of it. And then my favorite, of course, is the people who transposed this against Vitalik wearing his like unicorn pajama onesie thing. But these things are all just memes, and that's one of the hilarious things about this space is the mimetics of it.
Have you seen this picture before?
Yeah.
Yeah, you look like a fucking badass. I mean, the glasses, the hat, the gun. You're looking
body
hench.
armor.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to tell because I'm wearing so much black,
But you'd also do look like a January the 6th. I love that picture. That was a very early show we made, and I came to ask you technical stuff, and honestly, I had no fucking idea what you were talking about.
Well, hopefully you've learned a little since then.
A little bit. I learned what an XPub is. I learned what an extended public key is. Anyway, dude, welcome back. It's good. Oh, we recorded another time in person. in New York, in that little studio.
Was that around one of the consensus conferences?
Yes, that was one of my first in-person interviews with a camera. We rented the studio, and then we went and got burgers. Yeah, long time ago, man. Well, listen, thank you very much for doing that interview, because you said yes, and that essentially kickstarted getting known and credible Bitcoin people. Because, all right, it's Litecoin, but that you got me then Charlie Lee, and Charlie Lee got me so-and-so, and that started the whole journey.
Yeah,
so
well, you did the hard work.
Yeah, but you said yes. And
that was the easy part.
But it isn't really, because I imagine, in various times you've had lots of requests.
I very rarely say no.
Oh, I don't feel special. A lot of people said no early on, or a lot of people didn't reply. But getting that yes was like a big deal. That show was a credible show that went out and gave me credibility. So I owe you a debt of gratitude for that and various things. So thank you, Jameson. Welcome back. How are things at Casa?
Typical bear market shenanigans, but people are hodling, and so that's good. I mean, from a business perspective, Casa, compared to a lot of the other businesses in the space, we're a subscription service. So that has pros and cons. The pros are you have some fairly reliable annual revenue, and so we don't get hit as hard as the people who are doing BIPs or basically taking a cut of some other activity. That's good during the bear markets. The downside is that we don't see the same straight up a wall type of revenue increases during the crazy hype cycles. So give and take.
Yeah, I mean, like on the subscription, I mean, it's not cheap for the package I have. You have a gold, a platinum, and a diamond.
We have a couple premium tiers that are thousands of dollars a year, and then our sort of baseline gold tier is about $120 a year.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big jump for some people to make that step. And I found with Casa, I had it for a while before I used it. Like that first step of going through the process and setting up your multi-sig, it's actually really easy. And once you've done it, it's super easy.
Yeah, but people are afraid.
Yeah, because it's, for like people like me who are non-technical, a wallet is a big step, like a hardware wallet. The word multi-signature, is that 2 words?
Yeah.
But it's 1 word as multi-sig.
You can hyphenate it, you can do it 1 word. And
this fluid term, it's kind of intimidating. So what do you mean? I have to sign with multiple keys and I have to hide multiple keys? And that logic of where you put your keys. So we'll get into that. I'm going to talk about the Ethereum thing.
Sure.
I'm not critical, but I am interested in the motivations, the impact of that. I saw the criticism, obviously, died down, whatever. Mm-hmm. I have sponsors who have support multiple coins, some shit coins. Doesn't bother me. We do know there's a section of the community who will react.
Oh yeah, completely predictable.
Yeah. So, but I do have an important question, which I'll come to. But do you want to talk about why you did it? Any of the challenges? Impact?
Yeah, well, actually the challenges, there's nothing really new on the challenges side in comparison to what I wrote in 2017 when I was working at BitGo and we developed a multi-signature Ethereum wallet. There were a lot of challenges then. They're pretty much the same today. The main difference is that we have another 5 years of experience to look at standards and best practices of doing multi-sig in Ethereum. And we didn't want to roll our own anything. We didn't want to become smart contract developers. So we're using a well-vetted smart contract that's already securing untold billions of dollars worth of Ether and other tokens and stuff. But why did we do it? Well, it's all about markets, right? And so some people find this very hard to believe, but there are a lot of people out there who own both Bitcoin and Ethereum. And of course, a lot of other things. There's a long tail distribution, and you start to get into challenging business questions of deciding where the threshold is of what makes sense to support. But suffice to say, over the past few years, we started losing more and more deals because we didn't support Ethereum. And it hurts as a business to lose deals. And from a self-custody perspective, the thing that really irks me is when I see, and I've seen a lot of people do this, they end up choosing a trusted third-party custodian because that's the easiest way for them to secure many different assets.
Yeah.
And that's what, I mean, it just makes me cringe and it makes me angry. And so from my perspective, everything that I've ever said about Ethereum, I completely stand by. Feel free to go back through any of my blog posts or podcasts or whatever. My personal beliefs about Ethereum and its issues are still there, but I recognize that there are people who don't agree with that and they have this need. And I would rather see them self-custody their Ethereum if that means that they're also going to be self-custodying their Bitcoin.
So I haven't seen the Ethereum interface because I don't own any tokens. But is it just Ethereum or does it support the tokens as well?
The smart contract that we're using could support definitely any ERC20 token and possibly other stuff. But that's further down the line. We start out with the Ethereum token because that's what people are demanding.
Yeah, because I can imagine the only scenario I can imagine I was using it is if I wanted to store some like stable coin dollar on
yes, and I think that is a logical next step. I would say stable coins are probably our next greatest thing that we have received demand for. And once again, there are people in the space who will say stable coins are terrible and you're essentially bringing fiat into this space, which we don't need. But on the other hand, there's plenty of examples of utility and stable coins helping people.
I know, it's fucking ludicrous. Like the world runs on fiat. Yeah. Yes, we want to move to Bitcoin, but I wouldn't live if I lived on a Bitcoin standard entirely. My net wealth would have been crushed this last 8 months, and I would have struggled to pay my team. I'm a business, so I just think that's fucking ludicrous.
Oh yeah, I mean, we could do a whole episode about stable coins and all the problems with them. They have, of course, all the problems inherent with fiat, and then they usually have a lot of centralization and security model problems too. But nonetheless, people have use for them.
Well, I can imagine a scenario because I have to balance between the amount of Bitcoin and fiat I hold. It's it's a fluid kind of balance I have of both. But I can imagine, I know in the UK, I'm only protected up to £85,000, right? I can imagine a scenario where I want to de-risk some of that and maybe hold some in a stable coin on a multi-sig. There's a logical reason to do that. I don't do it at the moment, but I can certainly see a stronger requirement for that in more challenging markets, challenging countries. So it makes a logical sense. There's a lot of people in South America who absolutely love, need, rely, depend on stablecoins. And so I think the logic's there. The important question really is, so the thing me and Danny were talking about this morning, as a Bitcoiner, using Casa for both my football club and personally, can the introduction of Ethereum present any risk to my Bitcoin, or is there a separation within the stack of the code?
Right. So as with anything, it depends on the implementation.
Okay.
I would say with a lot of the wallets out there that support a long list of assets, most of them tend to be software-based wallets. Now, there are hardware wallets, of course, that support many different things. But, it really comes down to what is managing the keys themselves. So with Casa, of course, we have a separation of many different concerns, and we use diversity of different software and hardware. And the main sticking point of why does introducing other code into the Casa app not degrade your security with your Bitcoin? And that's because whenever you're having to make a transaction, you're having to go to these different hardware devices and actually verify the details of exactly what you're signing. So of course, anything is possible if enough things go wrong, but it's if you have both a Trezor and a ledger as part of your setup, how would it be that you would go to sign a Bitcoin transaction and those signature operations would create some other thing that you're not anticipating? But both of those companies and their whole software stacks and firmware and upgrade process that would all have to be compromised. At the end of the day, anything can be compromised. We're just trying to make it as difficult as possible for that to happen. So the short version is that you're verifying what you're doing and you're not trusting the Casa software.
Yeah. I mean, I'm staying with Casa. Love the product. I've always loved the app, but even early on when it was Jeremy Welch running the company, I said to him, your UX is incredible. Like, it's not like a Bitcoin company. It's like a Silicon Valley company. It makes for a moron like me. It makes it super easy to manage a multi-sig. So I love it. I'm staying with the product. But what I really wanted to ask is, because there has to be a decision there. You knew what you were going to face. There is this ideology around Bitcoin only. Like I've ignored that myself in what we do, in that we're a Bitcoin only podcast. Mm-hmm. But like, we will discuss Ethereum if it brings something relevant to the conversation with Bitcoin, or we've discussed Monero if it brings something relevant to the conversation with Bitcoin, or I'll have sponsors who support alternative coins, because if that enables us to be able to deliver this message and grow Bitcoin, we do. We accept that. But I've lost listeners because of it.
Sure.
There's people who will not listen to my podcast because of that. And I don't know if you can tell me, but my expectation is you lost some customers, because I saw some people saying online, well, I've quit. I will no longer use it. Mm-hmm. Was that a negligible amount? Can you talk about that?
Probably won't go into numbers, but I will say that what you see and hear on Twitter is greatly magnified versus reality. Most of the people who are outraged on Twitter, assuming they're actually people, I have some evidence that there's some bots and civil stuff going on. I'm not of course saying that all of these Twitter accounts are bots. A number of them are real people, but trying to remember, actually, I think Nick Carter described them as sort of perpetually outraged grievance mob or something. Like I know I'm screwing up his definition there, but it's the people who they want to complain about stuff all the time, and perhaps they're doing it for clout, perhaps it's just part of their tribalism. I fully
could also be honest held beliefs.
Oh, definitely. And I understand the whole toxic Twitter tribe stuff. I've played a toxic Bitcoin maximalist on several occasions myself.
Partaken into the
yeah, and I get it. And we of course expected to lose some customers. From a business perspective, we, of course, are operating under the thesis that we are growing the umbrella, growing our total addressable market, and that the hardliners who have the ideological considerations, we wish them the best, and they're going to go support the Bitcoin-only companies. The only thing that kind of irked me was some of the discussions around people saying that this was degrading the security model for Casa clients, and it's very hard to offend me, but that is one of the things that I do get offended by, is when people say that I am putting other people's funds at risk. I mean, Casa eats its own dog food. We use Casa for our own corporate treasury. Our employees use Casa. This is a friends and family operation, right? So, the claim that I would degrade the security of Bitcoiners just as a sort of cash grab to try to get Ethereum market share is offensive to me. And some people are going to believe that, they're going to say that, and there's nothing I can do to stop that. But we are going forward with this. There's no arguing against it at this point. Like, we've been committed to it for over 6 months, probably 9 months of research and development. And maybe it's a bad idea. Maybe we won't get a significant amount of business from it. And, maybe it goes so terribly that we decide, some years in the future that we drop support for it. It's, anything's possible. This is a fluid environment. We're going to be actually, I think Wire just announced that they were shutting down operations, or
are they?
their future is definitely in peril. And we use Wire for our buy Bitcoin stuff in the app, and so most likely that's going to be going away. I don't know whether or not we're going to be replacing them with someone else. It's hard to say, but
I didn't know Wire were in trouble.
Yeah, well, I think they had like a $1.5 billion buyout that was supposed to happen, and then that fell through, and now apparently everything seems to be falling apart. But that's the nature of the space, right? Is it?
Are you worth 1.5 billion? Or are you worth shit?
2022 was a terrible year to be an investor in this space, but 2022 was a great year to be a technologist, and so that is the optimistic take that I'm kind of walking away from last year with. Is thankfully I consider myself a technologist first. All of the other stuff is kind of tangential and a result of my interest in different technology. But that also kind of comes full circle to the fact that by many people's definition, I am a shitcoiner, and I have been called a shitcoiner. Probably two outrage incidents a year for the past 4 or 5 years, and this is because I play around with any technology that interests me.
Yeah,
and due to my audience, whenever I talk about any technology, if there's any kind of even possible financial incentive there, if I even talk about it, then I'm considered as shilling that technology.
You're a shitcoiner. You're a shitcoiner since Grin.
Oh yeah. And so that was an outrage incident 3 or 4 years ago where I was running a Grin node, and apparently that meant that I was shilling it and saying that people should be buying and selling it. But I never bought or sold it. I don't even know where I would have. Like, none of the exchanges I had accounts on even had Grin support. So
yeah, it never got listed, I don't think.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
And it had terrible economics. Like, no one who looked into the economics would have invested in it.
Remind me, was it like they had a different way of approaching privacy?
Yeah, it was a privacy coin. It was using Mimblewimble. And
Yeah.
I've been talking about Mimblewimble as a protocol since probably 2015, when it was the first white paper for Mimblewimble came out. And I guess that's the short version, is that anyone out there should expect that I will be interested in almost anything that is going to increase privacy. So if there's a new shitcoin that comes out and that it claims to have the best privacy ever in the world, you can bet that I'm going to be looking into it and playing around with it and might be talking about it. That doesn't mean it's investment advice.
Yeah, listen, look, I think it's fine. And also, look, I mean, if you laid out your criticisms of Ethereum, I'd probably agree with them.
Yeah.
I think it has been a platform which has been used to spread a lot of shitty projects and shitty ideas. I'm not a fan of NFTs. I am not a fan of ICOs anymore, mainly because I lost loads of money on them. I'm just not really a fan of it. But I do find it hard to argue against stable coins and their usage. We don't have, I don't believe we have a usable, decent stablecoin of Bitcoin. And it's very hard to argue against that, especially when we talked to Alex Gladstein. He talks about how people in these countries are using stablecoins. And even when a Bitcoin is like, well, no, they should be using Bitcoin, I actually just think it's a moronic statement, because these people are already challenged maybe by high inflation or capital controls. This is an option for them, and people will refer to the tool that's available. So it doesn't bother me. I'm shouting at people about Ethereum is not making it go away.
And we will be seeing stable coins on Bitcoin, on Lightning. And we will be seeing the same crowd of people then decrying the fact that people are using Bitcoin for fiat operations.
Well, I think that would be a subset.
Yeah.
I think, again, I think people who criticize stable coins on any platform, my expectation is they live a privileged life and don't understand the difficulties that other people have. I think people will always find a tool that helps them. But my analogy for this is, people don't really like it, but my analogy for you guys supporting Ethereum is kind of like cigarettes. In that you can absolutely hate Ethereum and still use Casa, just as you can absolutely hate cigarettes and still go to the liquor store and buy a bottle of whiskey. It is just something you don't like, you don't agree with, a market that's lied about what it is, what it represents, that has some kind of like negative connotations attached with it, but you can just not buy it.
Yeah.
You can go and buy your bottle of whiskey and leave and not buy any cigarettes. You can go and multi-sig with Casa and store your Bitcoin and not buy Ethereum.
Yeah, I think the short version is that I will never apologize for, and I will never feel bad about helping people improve their security, regardless of what that is, even if it's security for an asset that I'm not interested in and that a lot of people hate.
The YouTube's going to be on fire about this. Okay. Can we talk about Luke Dashir and what happened this week?
We can try.
Okay. Big outrage on Twitter. Also some horrible dunking, which I didn't like at all.
Yeah.
But my main issue with it was I had no idea what the fuck he was talking about. Okay. Storing Bitcoin for me is very simple. Some people do it in exchange. Some people do it on a software wallet on their phone. Some people do it on a hardware wallet. Some people have multi-sig. When he explained the scenario, what went wrong, I just fundamentally didn't understand it. He talked about PGP. Mm-hmm. I've tried to use PGP. It's not moron friendly.
Right.
It's a very tricky tool to use. So I didn't understand it. So I'm just going to throw it to you. Talk me through what happened.
Well, to kind of set the stage, our information is incomplete. So even anything that I'm going to say is somewhat speculative and based upon partial information and tweets and, a few conversations that I've seen. So take anything that I say with a grain of salt because it could be wrong. But my understanding is that Luke had a setup that actually dated back 10 years. He said that he had generated these keys in 2012. So that means, this is pre-hierarchical deterministic wallet, pre-seed phrase. It's just a bunch of keys.
Hold on, hierarchical deterministic wallets are seed phrases.
Seed phrases, yes. So this is most likely he had a Bitcoin Core wallet.dat file that had just a bunch of private keys in it. And it sounds like what he was doing was he was securing that by encrypting it with PGP. So, at rest, he had this big data blob, which if anybody got a hold of that data blob, they couldn't do anything with it because you have to have the decryption key to actually be able to get the data and then use the private keys related to it. Now, at some point a few months ago, he started talking about one or more of his servers being compromised. What we don't know is how the servers got compromised. Some theories are that there was an insider employee attack at his data hosting provider who physically, accessed his server. Some people are speculating that it could have been some sort of software exploit, some sort of vulnerability. But the speculation is that most likely was sort of the entry point into what eventually turned into the compromise of his coins. What we don't know is exactly where he was keeping that wallet file. Most likely, I think, it was on one or more of his computers at his home, not on his server, from what I've seen him talk about.
That's still a hot environment.
Yeah, I mean, it's still an internet-connected computer, which generally, we would call that a hot wallet, even though the keys were encrypted at rest. And so what we don't know is how that attacker, assuming it's the same attacker, which seems likely, how that attacker got from compromising his server to compromising his home machines or whatever machines the actual keys were kept on.
The PGP key.
And the wallet itself. But he did say at some point his PGP key got compromised. Presumably that was not on the server and that was also on his home machines. And, if that was the key that he was also using to encrypt the wallet file, that would have been game over. Or, if he had some other really long decryption phrase for the wallet file, if his machine that he was using to access it had a keylogger, then eventually, once he decided to open up and decrypt that wallet, then the attacker would have had everything.
So let's go into the Jameson Lopp world. My expectation is you have something that scans your computer to look for keyloggers and things like that. Is that possible? Does that exist?
Well, it depends, right? So I actually don't have any antivirus that I run. I mean, all of my machines are Linux machines. They're generally fairly hardened, but also I don't keep any key material on them. So even my PGP keys, for example, I don't actually have those on my laptops or my other machines. I keep those on a YubiKey, it's just another dedicated device that does nothing except hold secrets. So, this is another thing, getting back to Luke. It sounds to me like he was not using dedicated hardware devices for any of his key material. His PGP key material, his wallet key material. I think most people would agree that had he been using dedicated devices that are not internet connected devices, then that would have mitigated this attack. But for various reasons, I won't speak for him, Luke does not believe in using hardware devices for his key material.
Huh. I would love to ask him that question and find out what the answer is. So if you're storing a PGP key on a YubiKey, at some point, if you want to transfer some Bitcoin in a hot environment, you have to either type it out or paste it. Yeah? They're the two options?
Well, if we try to apply using a YubiKey for what we believe Luke's setup was, if he had his wallet file encrypted with his PGP key, then he would run an operation, or he would run a command to decrypt those keys. And instead of pasting in a passphrase to decrypt them, his YubiKey, he would have to insert that into the computer, and then it would start blinking, and you have to physically tap it in order to access it and do that decryption operation.
I'm thinking if his machine is compromised, a keylogger would be able to note the keys that are being pressed. Can they also note copy and paste? Oh, this is what has been pasted?
Oh, yeah. Anything that's copy and pasted, like anything that is input or output from the computer could potentially be sucked up by that malware. So, even if you kept your PGP key on a YubiKey, as soon as you decrypted the file on that compromised machine, it would load the contents into memory.
That was my next question.
And any good malware would also be looking at what is currently in memory and siphoning that off.
So even in that environment, it sounds to me like it doesn't matter even if he has the YubiKey. Keeping that wallet.file in a hot environment is just massive risk.
Yeah, it creates an incredibly large attack surface. And this kind of... this is why it's really frustrating to see all of the FUD, of course. Everybody attacking self-custody, saying a lot of people out there who have vested interests, I think, against self-custody, saying, oh, look, even if this prominent protocol developer can't do it, then why should you believe you can? And I think that this is an interesting case of actually... being so deep into Bitcoin. And I think Luke would, once again, I don't want to speak for him, but I think on various occasions he has said that, he's not a security guy. He's a protocol and a software guy. And so he had this very unique setup with a lot of custom attributes. And also, I believe that he revealed a lot of that to the world, which in and of itself shouldn't be bad if your setup is secure. You should be able to reveal the architecture of your key management if it's secure.
I could tell you my multi-sig.
Yeah, security through obscurity is not a thing. But however, he had so many custom attributes that it seems there were vulnerabilities. And this is one of those things where I think people should keep in mind the Bitcoin motto, virus in numerous, strength in numbers.
Yeah.
Now, this applies to many different things in this space. Usually people are talking about the cryptographic security of public-private keys, and the fact that there's so many of them. Like that's why they're secure, just through entropy. But it's also applicable to your security setup, your architecture for managing your keys. If you're using an architecture that you created yourself from scratch, and nobody else uses it, and no one has ever vetted it, it hasn't been stress tested, it hasn't been adopted by other people, then it's highly likely that there are some holes and you have some blind spots. Like even myself, I'm not omniscient. I can't see everything. Having good security it's kind of a community problem. It's the same thing with open source, right? Why does open source work? It's because you have many different sets of eyes, many different perspectives who are all looking at the same thing and attacking it from different ways. So if you decide to go out on your own in Bitcoin, whatever you're doing, if no one else has done that, it's a lot riskier.
Yeah. By the way, Daddy's just brought this up. They got my cold wallet too. That doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think that when he talks about his cold wallet, he's talking about these keys that he may have generated them offline 10 years ago, but I think it's pretty clear that they have been touching the internet at some point since then.
Has he tweeted anything else about it since?
No, not really. So the Samurai guy has, though. I don't actually fully understand what he's saying here.
See, one of the interesting things is updating or modernizing your security protocols. And because when I first got in 2017, I bought a ledger straight away, and I operated with a single hardware wallet. And I had two. I had a ledger which had the majority of it was crypto back then, not just Bitcoin. And I backed up my private key, but that was written and that was stored somewhere in the house. I didn't have a lot back then. We're talking like, say, 25 grand. And then I had a Trezor, which was like my day-to-day, and I memorized the PIN. Okay? And then what happened is, during that year, that became a meaningful amount of value.
Sure.
All on a single hardware wallet with a written, like I knew I eventually was in a scenario, but I didn't deal with that for a long time.
Yeah, if your house burned down, you'd have a problem, right?
Yeah, I'd be gone. Yeah, I'd be screwed. And so what happened is I eventually got to the point where I needed to sort this out. So the first thing was a metal device. I did that. But that still could have been found in my house by somebody. So I eventually got to multi-sig, just because of Casa. But when I went back to the Trezor, I couldn't remember the PIN.
Oh.
Yeah. I hadn't written it down. I knew kind of what it was. And I was telling Danny the story earlier because I wanted to transfer it out into my Casa multi-sig. Every time I attempted it, the amount of time to have another go would go up.
Exponential backoff.
Yeah. So it was, I can't remember what it was. It was like 30 seconds, then a minute, then like 3 minutes, then like 8 minutes. Maybe it was, is that Pythagoras theorem, whatever. So it was about the fifth try I got it. Because I knew the 4 numbers-ish, I think maybe 5 numbers, and then eventually figured it out. So I got there. But like, that was a meaningful amount of Bitcoin, but not like a meaningful amount of my stack. But fuck, I didn't want to lose it. And so like over time, but I'm now at that point, I've been very comfortable with Casa, but I probably need to test my keys,
Well, and you should be getting reminders to do health checks.
I do get my reminders to do health checks. But to do a full health check, actually, this is another thing, right? I've maybe even discussed with you the idea of publicly stating parts of my security. Like one of those things, what I'm happy to say is that to fully test my multisig, I have to get on a plane. And I'm like happy to say that.
Yeah.
And so that's why I haven't got around to it, because I have to get on a plane. So yeah, I mean, I can empathize a little bit with Luke in that like he's had something, it's worked for 10 years.
It works until it doesn't.
Yeah, exactly. But you do need to keep updating.
This is just like following the coins since then. And I think they've actually now like overnight gone into chip mixer, which I'd never even heard of before.
What's chip mixer?
Just a mixing service. I don't know much about or anything about it.
So Luke, they put Luke Jr., Luke Dashir, stolen coins on the move, started a peel. What's a peel chain?
Well, it just means that they're peeling off amounts in multiple transactions.
The bulk of the continuing to P2P KH address and then a smaller amount peeled off to P2SH address remaining unspent. The last 2 peel address types changed it. Like, okay, can they keep following this? And event?
Yeah, these the OXT guys are pretty good at what they do. There's a number of folks who are pretty good at on-chain analytics. Of course, eventually, over a long enough period of time, the coins just sort of become part of the rest of the ecosystem. They get dispersed throughout many different wallets and services, and it just depends on what the attacker does with them and whether or not they make any mistakes where they could get caught and identified.
Presumably that now it's in with Chip Mixer, it's over in terms of tracking it though.
It's definitely a lot harder.
I hope he's okay. Luke's obviously been a very important person for Bitcoin. He's done some amazing things. That's why I didn't like the dunking on him.
Oh yeah, I mean he's a controversial figure for a variety of reasons, but I don't think that that's good reason to wish harm upon him.
Yeah, I hope he's okay. Well, yeah, we just have to reiterate to people they have to take their security seriously. They have to keep updating their security, testing their security. So it's probably a good time to talk about security planning. I obviously get a lot of emails in the show. Some people asking me about security. People bought maybe a ledger and say, what should I do? Like, people get very, very nervous about using their ledger, say, for the first time. Mm-hmm. And I have it's almost like a copy and paste email now. It's set it up, back up your private key, buy a metal seed storage device, transfer $10 in, wipe it, restore it, check it's still there, then send 10%, send another 15%, and then build up to
That's really one of the most important parts that I'm kind of disappointed. As far as I'm aware, none of the hardware manufacturers out there say, hey, you should set this all up and then you should wipe it and then you should reload it. Like that wiping and reloading is one of the most important things. And one of the ways that I think a lot of people lose their coins is they just don't test the recovery. And then the first time they go to test it, they find out something's wrong.
Yeah, they make a mistake writing down the recovery keywords.
Yep.
Yeah, it's the same set of instructions. So I'm kind of looking to you more for your advice. Like, if you're like, what are the logical steps you would say to somebody brand new to Bitcoin, not technically competent? What would you say the first kind of steps are?
Well, it depends on what value we're talking about, right? If someone's dealing with $10 or $100, then I don't think they really need to put a lot of effort into thinking about security. If it's a trivial amount that you would not really care about losing. The flip side is, I think that whatever amount you do have, you should multiply it by 10. And that should be the amount that you are thinking about needs to be secured, because of course it's a very volatile space, and you can very easily, like you said, go from having $1,000 to $10,000 or whatever, 10x the amount that you had, and your security level is really only appropriate for 1/10 of that. So I see it as, if you're dealing with pocket money, then you're fine just using a software wallet on your mobile phone or your desktop or whatever, because you're probably not going to lose any sleep if something catastrophic happens to that. If you're dealing with a level that is thousands of dollars, if you're talking about a month's wages or more, non-trivial amounts, then you should at least spend $50 or $100 and buy a dedicated hardware device for those private keys.
And look, the hardware devices are, the main players are obvious: Ledger, Trezor, Cold Card, and the main ones. Are there any newer ones and do you support any other ones?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of newer ones, and it's actually hard to even keep track of them all.
Are there any ones that you as a company rate?
Yeah, so in addition, from Cold Card, based off of the Cold Card platform, there's the Foundation Passport.
Can you look that up?
That and I believe it's Kobo. We've started to add some of these devices that support the. It's called the UR 2.0 spec. It's basically it's animated QR codes for sending the data back and forth, and we really like those. And actually, I think Blockstream Jade just added support for this animated QR code spec. The reason that I like that is that it drastically simplifies the user experience. Like you don't have these USB cables. You don't have to be plugging stuff in. You're literally, it's point and shoot to transfer the data back and forth for the signing operations.
That's a cool looking device.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not cheap though. I think Trezor still has the most economical, but it doesn't have that animated QR code support, so it's a little less user friendly.
Every time I use Trezor, it asks me to install a bridge.
Yeah, basically drivers, so that it can talk to your operating system.
Yeah, I just trust it and install it. But I don't like going via a browser.
Yeah.
I just don't like that. Is Trezor still a browser, or have they got software interface yet?
Well, they have the Trezor suite that I think they rolled out last year.
Okay. Have you seen the new Ledger stacks?
I haven't got my hands on it. I think I said at the time, I was disappointed that they haven't added a camera, and because if they had a camera, they could then have the animated QR code support.
Right, okay.
So my understanding is it's still mostly going to be USB based. Maybe they'll have Bluetooth again, like they did with the Nano X. But I'm not a fan of the Bluetooth stuff either, because I think for most people, just the process you have to go through for pairing Bluetooth stuff is beyond a lot of people's capability.
Yeah.
They do look cool, these though.
They do look cool.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen them in person. They are very cool. And I don't know, this is me being an aesthetic person. I have multiple wallets for day-to-day things, and just having 3 or 4 of them. I mean, they're not cheap as well, but like having 3 or 4 like that is actually useful. But also, I travel with Bitcoin, not a lot, but I travel with a small amount of Bitcoin just in case I have to do any transactions while we're away. This feels like an easier thing to carry around with me. It feels like something that gets like wallet phone that.
Yeah.
Yeah, very cool. Okay, so and then when you get into the world of like a meaningful amount of Bitcoin, you're obviously going to recommend multi-sig.
Well, yeah. So when you get to what I would call generational wealth, an amount that is a significant portion of your life savings and that you're probably wanting to hold on to and pass on, that's when you start to want to make sure that you don't have any single points of failure. You don't want one thing to go wrong that could then be catastrophic. So, there's many different ways to eliminate single points of failure. Obviously, we're a big fan of multi-sig because I think that generally makes it easier. Now, multi-sig is more complicated than a single signature wallet. You're dealing with more pieces, you're dealing with more data, but also if you do it right, you can end up with a much more robust setup. But once again, this kind of actually goes back to the discussion with Luke. If you're rolling your own multi-sig setup, you need to be really, really careful about how you do it, because there's many different ways that you can screw it up and still introduce single points of failure. So if you're going to go with multi-sig, then I highly advise using what would be like considered a standard architecture. 2 of 3, 3 of 5, not doing anything crazy with like scripts or derivation paths or whatever. But the big thing is, of course, make sure you can wipe it all and recreate it. And that's what we're definitely going for if we're talking about something that can go through an inheritance process. Like, it needs to be simple, not just for you, but for your non-technical family and heirs.
I think I asked this last time I spoke to you. You've talked then about people rolling their own multi-sig, something I'm never going to do ever in my entire
You've
life.
kind of done it.
Have I?
With Hoddle and Phil Geiger.
When I lost my key.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I'm never going to do that shit. At the same time, I trust Casa to roll my multi-sig for me. In a scenario where you guys are doing big tech upgrades, how much sleep do you lose when you publish the new code?
Actually, I sleep very well at night because I know that we don't have a threshold of keys that could be used against our customers. Like even if Casa got completely compromised, then no one's going to lose their money.
Right.
It's the very simple act of each of our clients having to verify their spending operations on hardware and software that Casa has no control over. That's what helps me sleep at night. Now, that creates challenges for us because it means that we have all of these other vendors out there who are changing their software, and we need to keep all of these pieces moving and in play and making sure that there aren't breaking changes, which happen. Like we actually had one happen a few weeks ago, and thankfully the vendor got it fixed very quickly. But that's part of what you're kind of paying for, is for Casa to be handling all that like technical minutia and make sure that everything's still operating as expected.
Oh, man, I could do it. I would still lose sleep. You mentioned inheritance planning there. So on a personal level, that's the one thing I haven't solved in probably the best way possible. Now, look, I know Casa has a plan for that, but just say you can't afford that Casa solution. Maybe it's a bit too high for you, but you do want to make a plan. Do you have personal recommendations for planning? Because like I have some, it puts trust in certain things, which I don't want to explain here.
Sure.
And I've tried to put a scenario in that doesn't put me in a scenario where anything could be stolen, but like in a scenario where something happens, things can be brought together. And maybe when you explain it, it's similar to what I'm doing, but is there like certain recommendations for death planning? Because didn't that dude, that like old crazy Romanian Bitcoin guy who drowned?
Yeah, Mirka.
Yeah, he didn't have inheritance planning set up, supposedly.
That we know of.
That we know of. Yeah.
Did he really drown?
Did he really have Bitcoin? Was he really Romanian? By the way, he was crazy, right?
He was one of the most eccentric figures in the space, for sure.
Who did he death threat? Peter Willett?
Andreas.
Didn't he death threat Peter Willett as well?
Yes, and I think that was for SegWit.
Huh, interesting. Conversation for another day. Okay, so what kind of advice, recommendations would you have for people?
Yeah, so inheritance planning for these bearer assets is a really interesting tightrope to walk, because presumably if you're self-custodying, of course, if you keep all your money with a third party, then you can just give them inheritance instructions and assume that they'll follow that. But if you're self-custodying, then presumably you want to retain control of your assets as long as you're alive. But then you somehow want this switch to flip when you pass that transitions control to some predetermined entity or set of people or whatever. And of course, this is not something that you can do within the Bitcoin protocol or really any protocol. It's the Oracle problem, right? None of these protocols or blockchains have any understanding of quote unquote real world events. So you have to get other humans involved, humans who are going to be doing things like authenticating your death certificate or whatever proof of death there is. And there's a million different ways to do it. You roll your own setup essentially, and some of them may be more trusted than others. I mean, the very naive thing to do would to be have a trusted friend, family, or attorney, or someone who has like a fiduciary duty to you, and you just give them the keys to the kingdom and pray that they will be honorable and not access anything. The more common thing that we see happen is people create what I would call treasure hunts. Right? Is it you distribute keys, or you distribute different pieces of keys or passwords or whatever all around across different locations, different people, and presumably they will come together and help reconstitute that. And I should know because that's the type of setup that I had back in the day. And I have a lengthy blog post where I went into describing how I did that, but it was very technical and never actually...
You never actually died.
Well, I never even actually tested it from the sense of like making my executors try to follow my instructions. So I kind of broke one of the cardinal rules there, that it was not well tested and it very well may not have worked, or it may have been too technical for some of them to understand because they had to run this like special Shamir secret sharing software, and they had to get, you know, the pieces of the decryption keys from different places. But you know, we at Casa, we have a couple different ways that you can do the inheritance, but you know, essentially you're distributing keys so that you retain access and control and custody while you're alive, and then Casa can facilitate essentially verifying proof of death and signing with the Casa key. And then you may involve your attorney or another trusted entity who would have one key and be able to do the same.
So you have a key, they have a key. Where's the third key come from?
There's also a Casa mobile key, basically your account key. It's on your phone.
So you give someone access to the phone?
Yes.
Yeah. Interesting. I mean, mine's kind of a treasure hunt. Mm-hmm. I can't explain what it is. I'll tell you offline. But mine's kind of a treasure hunt. I probably should just get the Casa one. Probably ask Nick to give it to me. Nick, give it to me. Cool. Brilliant. Okay. Anything else on security we've not touched? Because I do want to get into tech with you.
I think that's enough for now. I mean, security it's another rabbit hole, and it's a never-ending battle. So there's always stuff to talk about, but it can get a bit repetitive.
So you said it's been a good year in tech.
Mm-hmm.
What's the thing you've enjoyed most in tech?
Definitely AI.
Okay.
That's what I've spent the most time playing around with. And, AI seems to have gone through a bit of a renaissance in 2022. Part of that, of course, is the software, but also there have been hardware advancements that have gotten us like orders of magnitude improvement. So, I was playing around with the image generation stuff. Obviously, the ChatGPT and other language text-based stuff. I published an article in Bitcoin Magazine that I don't think I've even told anyone this yet, but the majority of it was actually written with AI. It was this dystopian future CBDC piece.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's an exclusive. What Bitcoin did exclusive. You got to dig that one out.
Yeah, I'm having a look. Is that the San Francisco?
Yes.
Okay.
San Francisco 2033 or something like that.
Okay. Yeah. Let's just read the first couple of paragraphs. This is a science fiction piece by Jameson Lopp. Okay. Good morning. I'm gently awoken by my smartwatch's soothing female voice. It's a bit robotic, but does have a touch of personality and charm. Today is Monday. It's my birthday. Today is Monday, October 31st, 2033. It continues. Your weekly basic income is $3,000. What the fuck? And your weekly basic income of $3,432 has been deposited in your account. $1,049 was withheld to pay your student loan. $2,300 withheld for your landlord. Blackstone Hathaway. Shit, that's a bit more than last week. There must have been another inflation adjustment. So what did you do? Did you do it bit by bit?
Yeah, I forget which service I even used. It was a prompt generation tool where I could write a basic outline of the story, and it would just start filling in pieces, and then I could sort of roll the dice and get different paragraphs, and then choose a paragraph, and then say, okay, now take this and ingest it and do the next paragraph. And or I could even say, now delve deeper into this character's backstory and so on.
Yeah, I mean, look, I love ChatGPT. I think it's amazing. Danny, we're using it now. Tell Jameson.
Well, we kind of used it as a joke first because it came up in the interview with Danny Scott, and so when I first played with it, I typed in some prompts to get a podcast description, and it was pretty good, but we didn't use it. And so then after the Danny Scott show, we did actually use it in his description. And I don't think they're good enough all the time.
Bring it up?
Yeah, I will. I don't think they're good enough all the time, but they give you a really good structure at least to work from.
mean, it's a bit like with Rail Bedford. I do the match reports, but actually what happens is the commentator writes a match report and then I go through it and like update it, just get in the style we want. But it saves me hours because he's done the majority of the work.
Yeah, and that's really what I think AI is going to be doing. It's not going to be completely displacing jobs. It's going to be another tool that gives people an order of magnitude performance improvement with what they're doing.
So this was 100% written by AI.
Okay, in this episode of this podcast, I sit down with Danny Scott, the CEO of Coin Corner, a Bitcoin exchange based in the UK. Danny has built Coin Corner into a successful business without relying on VC funding, and he shares his insights on the challenges and opportunities of doing so in a highly competitive world of Bitcoin. During our conversation, we discussed the current state of Bitcoin adoption and the importance of making cryptocurrency accessible and user-friendly for those who are new to the space. Danny shares his thoughts on the role of the Lightning Network in driving adoption and how it's, it's pretty, I haven't actually read this. It's pretty good.
Yeah. And
there's like, as I read it, there's a couple of bits I'll change. So like making cryptocurrency accessible.
Yeah.
It would be of either making the cryptocurrency or Bitcoin accessible. Overall, it's a fascinating it's a bit self-indulgent.
Yeah.
Overall, it's a fascinating conversation with a true industry leader. Tune in to hear Danny's insights on building a Bitcoin business, driving adoption in the future of Bitcoin industry. Do you know what I do like about it? But maybe I don't like about it. It feels more polished. It feels of something like maybe the BBC would do.
Well, maybe they're using AI. But there's bits that are a bit cringe, but like you could use that and then build out off it very easily.
Well, if I was writing a description, I reckon something like that, I'd spend 15, 20 minutes, but with ChatGPT, you can do it in 2 minutes.
Yeah.
You just read through it and edit it.
Yeah, I much prefer to edit something than have to write the whole thing from scratch.
And you are testing it for something else?
Well, after the show with David Zell, someone got in touch and said we could input the audio from the podcast and use it to generate show notes, which would definitely save time.
Yeah, and I've been doing that myself. I just wrapped up a month-long archival project where, my problem is pretty much every interview I've ever done is hosted by other people. And over the past 10 years, link rot sets in. People take their sites offline. We lose content. And so I got tired of that happening. And so I wrote some scripts to basically suck down every video and MP3 that I've ever been in over the past 10 years. And once I had them all, this is 45 gigabytes of files, I then wrote some other scripts to extract the audio and then yet another script, and doing this all in bulk, of course, to take those audio files and transcribe them with OpenAI Whisper.
Okay, but is the finding bit, is that AI or is that just Google search?
Well, the finding bit was easy as a result of my OCD because I already have all of them linked on my website. So I wrote a script to basically parse through all the URLs on my website.
Can you bring up ChatGPT?
Yeah.
Just want to try something here. Try this one. Tell the story of Jameson Lopp, because this is what is good, and Peter McCormack's Day of Fun Shooting Guns. This is what I love. I've done so many of these, just like stupid little things. Oh, so it's looking for a story. See, that's weird, because we used to have it write in stories.
Maybe if we say, tell me a fictional story.
Yeah, so that's weird because it used to do that. I was getting it to write stories.
This actually goes back to censorship. They've really been clamping down on what the AI can do. All of these different AI services because people are abusing them.
Yeah, but hold on. Then what's the point in having it? Are they worried about like university kids having their coursework written on it?
There's so many different things that people are worried about. Whether it's just like low-level biases that are inherent in this stuff, because all of this stuff is being trained off of data, and all of the data is being generated by humans, and humans have biases, and so it's going to be representative of some subset of humanity.
I mean, it's like the internet or Bitcoin can be used for good or bad, right?
Yeah.
We know that with Bitcoin, and I always go back to Peter Van Valkenburg's Senate testimony where he said, for every person you talk about using Bitcoin for money laundering, I'm going to tell you about someone using Bitcoin in Nigeria to campaign against police violence. I always think that's a great way of telling the story of technology. AI, we can use this to write descriptions and save us time, to do show notes. I'm going to come back to that as well, by the way. But also, kids are going to be able to use it to not have to do coursework. It's the cat's out of the bag.
Well, this is kind of like security. This is going to be a never-ending battle. So, I've already seen stories of professors and teachers saying that they're suspecting certain students of using these AI text generators to do their essays for them. And then just in the past week or so, we saw one university student create a quote-unquote AI detector.
I heard about this.
But this is going to go back and forth. Then the AI is going to be modified, or people are going to basically be hacking, quote unquote hacking. With this, it's more about trying different prompts to work their way around the filters. That's what I would say these AI hackers have been doing. Is we're understanding that the people who are running the servers for this stuff, they're filtering things, especially on the image generators, because of course there's a lot of crazy stuff you could do there. But there's always ways to work your way around it. These are essentially this prompt generation is a new sphere of kind of programming language. It's just not a very well-defined programming language, and so people are trying to really push the limits of what's possible with it. And as they do that, the folks that are running these services are then saying, oh, we need to stop that. And so it's just, the same old issue of censorship.
So interesting. Danny's just doing a test on an AI content detector.
And this is the description from that Danny Scott show that was 100% AI.
And it thinks it's 2% human generated.
It's pretty good.
Yeah. Interesting. Go and get one of our other descriptions.
All right.
And just see what happens with that. Going back to the show notes, Danny, what I don't know is if it can read the content, how does it know what is something we would want as a show note?
Again, I think it probably gives you a massive list and you would then have to just edit it.
Yeah. Same with the timestamps. How does it know what a section is?
I don't know if it could do timestamp.
No, it can. The email I forwarded you this morning, right? He said it can do timestamps. If it gets to the point where it can do show notes, timestamps, and transcriptions, like it puts people out of work for us.
I mean, here you go. I've just put another description in that was human generated, and it's got it 100%.
That's fascinating. That is fascinating. So I wonder how it's doing that. None of the rules are. But look, whatever. The cat is out of the bag with this.
Yep.
People use it for good and people use it for bad. I think in this scenario, there's a lot of good that you can use it for and efficiencies. The downside of that is people potentially losing jobs. You could identify that in our world. I struggle to see too much evil it can be used for on text generation yet. But it feels like we're now in this very early stage of this AI thing that might move quickly.
Yeah, I mean,
the robots are coming.
Well, I think the very first thing I would look at is, what do a lot of scammers do, and why couldn't you have an AI bot that basically follows the rules for some particular scam that people perpetrate over the internet?
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah.
Can you ask them to write code?
Yeah.
I saw somebody said they put some coding, I can't remember what the language was, and they wanted it converted to Python, and it converted it to Python and executed and worked instantly.
Wow.
I can't remember what can you think of a language you would convert from something to Python?
He said save 2 days of work.
Huh?
Save them 2 days of work.
So that's Jeremy saying. So you've seen that tweet, yeah. So do you remember what code it was? Like from what?
I don't know it was a function. I don't remember which kind of function. I don't know if it was JavaScript or not.
So 2 days of work was saved, converted from one programming language to another. Again, fascinating and great. Puts people out of work, potentially, but drives efficiencies.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, as a programmer, I've always found it to be incredibly inefficient, basically with the interface of how I talk to the machine and how I instruct the machine of what I want it to do. This is why programming pays so well and why it's so difficult, is because the machine does exactly what we tell it to. And the vast majority of time, what we're telling it is not actually what we want. And that's because of the limitations of programming languages and just the complexity of software. So, my ideal future is a Star Trek future, computer, create a simulation that does this thing, and then a few hours go by and it gives you the result or whatever. And even past that, right now we have text-based AI. We're prompting it now with, instead of having to learn the syntax and semantics of some foreign computer programming language, you're able to use English and probably other languages. I'm not familiar with what they've done with regard to other foreign languages, but there's no reason why you couldn't use any human language. And even that's a huge leap forward, but that is only the beginning. I actually wrote an article about Elon Musk and Twitter and stuff earlier last year, where I said, what I'm really looking forward to is direct neural interface with the machines. Now, of course, there's pros and cons, but if you think about it from an efficiency standpoint, of course, there's huge security ramifications, but from an efficiency standpoint, even what we're doing right now, me having to think something, then having to translate it into English, and then it has to get transferred, through the air and interpreted by your ears and turned into signals in your brain. That is incredibly inefficient when there's no reason why we couldn't have a direct, neural electrical signal to neural electrical signal interface.
Yeah, but do you want that?
Well, yes, I'm sure this will create more dystopian outcomes as well.
So Danny's found the tweet. I just gave ChatGPT 200 lines of JavaScript code and asked it to translate the code into Python. The code passes text using regular expressions. It was complex. 2 minutes later, I had Python code that worked flawlessly. The thing just saved me a couple of days of work. That's fucking insane. Yeah. So firstly, I think Twitter is going to get damaged by this. I think there are nefarious actors and as well as just some morons who are going to spin up accounts with ChatGPT and start arguing.
Oh, I've seen them already, and I've actually I've run the Turing test questions against some of them, and it's been obvious that they're not human.
Mad, but it's just going to get to a stage where talking to people you don't know is going to be pointless. I almost going to get to a point with my Twitter, I'm just only want to see people I know. That's going to become pointless. But I'm also looking forward towards this kind of, not looking forward as excited, but just looking forward considering the singularity of all these technologies coming together. Quantum, AI, Neuralink. I think it's a bit shit. I think I don't want to go and live in a cabin and only speak to humans and have no technology. I can see a scenario where people start to reject technology and want to live without it. I can see a scenario where I get a bit older and I'm like, do you know what? I don't want a phone, maybe an old dial-up hand phone, and go and live in a cabin somewhere with a dog. Danny pops around occasionally.
Well, yeah, I mean, especially if you're being bombarded with noise all day long. And I'm an optimist, so I think that there will be solutions to all of this. And one solution, for example, to the issue of noise and reputation on social networks is actually something I've talked about a few times, Hive. They're essentially mapping social networks. They're starting with Twitter, but they've mapped something like 400 different quote-unquote communities, or you call them interest groups or specialties on Twitter. And they're just using the sort of connection graphs to show where are people focusing their attention. And it's a very hard thing to fake. You can spin up 1 million bots, but you can't convince 1 million people to follow them.
Unless you're a really good bot.
Yeah, unless you're actually creating real valuable content, in which case, maybe it's a signal bot, not a noise bot.
What's that film where the guy falls in love with a AI bot? Is it him, her, she?
Or her.
Her? Yeah. Have you seen that film?
Yeah.
I mean, a brilliant film. She was pretty convincing he fell in love.
Yeah, I'm sure that will happen.
Yeah. It's when they combine it with a real doll. Have you ever seen that film, Lance and the Real Doll? Yeah, it's a good film. Yeah, I don't know, man. It's just all going a bit too far.
Well, this is the thing, right? Is that this is why it's great to be a technologist, because technology is not just going forward linearly, it's accelerating. And so it is very exciting to to keep track of. I mean, it's also very scary because humans generally don't like change, or at least we like to say that we don't like change. We're very adaptive humans. So in hindsight, you look back over the past few years or decades or whatever, and change has been crazy, and yet we somehow keep adapting to it. And so we will keep adapting. It will keep creating more and more weirdness. If someone from today is looking 10 years in the future, I can guarantee you their mind will be blown. But the people who are living in the present day in the future will be like, yep, this is how things are now.
What about combining AI with CRISPR and just saying like, yeah, like some fucking crazy kid in his dorm, yeah, create me something that is, as dangerous as Ebola, but spreads like COVID. Map it out.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot of ramifications when it comes to biotechnology. I'm especially afraid of nanotechnology. There's this one dystopian apocalypse that's called the gray goo scenario, but essentially that's a scenario where nanobots go out of control replicating, and there's no way for us to stop them, and they turn the entire Earth into nanorobots, and there's no way to escape them.
Oh, man, see, I just want to go and live in a cabin. I don't know. It's too far. I kind of feel like we've got to live through this like golden age of technology, and then we might also, because of the exponential nature of technology, live through the start of the dystopian era. I know you're an optimist.
Well, I mean, but there's also the great filter question, which this is more of an astrophysics question of like, why don't we hear signals from other species?
Fermi's paradox.
Yeah. And so, the simple explanation is that every species that becomes sentient and develops technology that is sufficient to start creating signals that propagate through the universe eventually also hits this inflection point, which we may be close to, wherein the power of the technology becomes uncontrollable and they destroy themselves for one of a million different reasons.
Yeah, Jesus Christ, man. All right. What about Nostr?
Yes, that's an interesting new protocol. What is it? I think it's notes and other stuff transmitted by relays is what it actually, the acronym stands for. And a lot of people are looking at it and saying, oh, it's the new Twitter. But it's not a social network. It's literally just a protocol for passing messages around a peer-to-peer network. And these messages are cryptographically signed, and they have some interesting attributes. But there's a lot of pros of what you can build on top of a network like that. There's also a lot of challenges that are going to have to be overcome if Nostr is going to become a globally adopted network.
So it is a protocol, but you can build a Twitter on top of it.
Yes.
Yeah. So what are its main challenges? Because I mean, look, most people listening to this will have heard of it. A lot of people signed up and checked it out.
Yeah, I mean, there's some scaling challenges. There's some security challenges. Like one of the problems right now is that you have a single public-private key pair and you're reusing that for everything. So if that ever gets compromised, you're screwed. Like there's no way to revoke that and change to another key. I think that's going to be addressed, of course. You would want perhaps some sort of hierarchical deterministic wallet where you can migrate what key you're using. There's also ways to do that with like decentralized identifiers, of which there are a number of different projects out there, which would allow you to have like your identity that is then separate from the actual keys that you're using for this. And also right now, most people who are using Nostr clients are literally pasting their private key into an internet connected device. There's a few ways around that as well. And hopefully you'll eventually just have your dedicated hardware device that you'll use for that. On the scaling standpoint, this is kind of like Bitcoin in the sense that it's kind of like a flood fill network. All of the relays are essentially listening to each other, and you can filter things out. But in general, right now, if you broadcast a message and it's correctly signed, it's generally going to go to all of the other relays out there. And so there's a question of, how much can that scale before we start to see some limitations, whether it's bandwidth limitations, disk storage limitations. What are the incentives? What is the game theory of the network? Is it denial of service protected? So like when you run a Bitcoin node software has a ton of different denial of service checks that it's running whenever it's receiving new data. And if you do something to violate any of those, it considers you a bad peer and it basically cuts you off and it stops talking to you. I don't know the Nostr relays well enough to say if they have enough like denial of service checks built in. If they don't, then there's going to be some growing pains, and I expect more tools and rules are going to be built around that. And then there's also just the incentive question of who's running the nodes, why or how are you going to let other random third parties like connect to your node? Are you going to require some sort of small fee? I know there is an improvement proposal that would allow you to actually attach some proof of work to your Nostr messages. I don't know how widely that's been implemented, but that's just a high level gist of there are open issues that are going to need to be resolved, but I expect that the network is going to continue to grow. It's going to have growing pains, and as long as there is sufficient interest and development around it, then people are going to find solutions to these issues.
Okay, something we need to play a little bit more with, so we'll check that out. Is there anything else that excites you?
Good question. I mean, most of the stuff that I've been doing has been around AI and combining different aspects of AI. So I think people see these tools and they don't really extrapolate what the tool is going to be able to do in several years. So like we see people creating images, and right now all they're thinking about is, I can type in a prompt and I can get a cool 2-dimensional image or whatever. But obviously that's only the beginning. The next steps we're going to see, 3-dimensional models. I think this is already starting to happen. We should expect that architects and designers, game designers and whatever are going to be able to use AI to start generating entire virtual worlds. I've already seen AI image generation added as a plugin to 3D modeling tools.
Wow.
So that you can say, I've created this landscape or this cityscape or whatever, and I don't want to have to spend days like finding and applying textures. I'm just going to type in a prompt and I would say, make this building look like, Gothic architecture from the 1500s or whatever. Boom. So, this is why I say sure, AI may get rid of some jobs, but in general, it's just going to accelerate our productivity and be a new set of tools that, much like how computing and the internet in general has affected every industry, I think AI is going to have a similar reach.
Yeah, well, until we replace ourselves with robots who are more efficient, there will be that transitionary stage, which is Neuralink.
Yeah.
And then we'll just replace the bits of it. Like, we won't need the body because the body's fucking useless. We can probably make a better body and then we'll all be gone.
Yeah. But then, I mean, kind of getting back to Bitcoin and stuff, Lightning Network has definitely been interesting to see all of the new developments that have been going on there. Yeah. I think in my annual report that I put out recently, I showed that the actual capacity of Lightning Network, it's gone up in Bitcoin terms over the past year. I think it's gone down a little in dollar terms, of course, due to the exchange rate.
But up in Bitcoin terms is a better measure.
If you're using it as your unit of count, yeah. But in general, we're seeing more and more businesses that are building on top of it, and who knows what's going to happen once we have other assets and other tokens on Lightning. But I also think that this is going to supercharge a number of just other networks and services in the ecosystem. Kind of getting back to Nostr again. I had a tweet where I said, it's actually quite appropriate that Nostr was invented by a Lightning developer, because I think that, that's going to be a very important integration in order to get the incentives right. For a network like this. And if we can get to a point where we really have these decentralized peer-to-peer networks where the incentives are such that you can access them and use them by actually paying for what you're using, and doing all of this without AML, KYC, privacy ramifications. This is getting us towards more of the anarcho-capitalistic cyberpunk future that I've been trying to build for a decade.
Yeah. It's very exciting. I'm with you on the AI. The AI is very exciting, but I think it's really cool that Lightning's growing. I think the different use cases people are discovering for Lightning. I love this idea of moving fiat money around the world on the Lightning network and bypassing banks. I think that's a super cool idea. So I think there's lots of cool things happening. I can't believe after 5 years we're actually sat here doing this again. That is also, I wonder if we'll be here in 5 more years doing this. Who knows?
If we are, then it's once again, it's going to be another order of magnitude of weirdness that has transpired since then.
Yeah, we might record it in the metaverse, and Danny might have been replaced by AI. We might have generated all the surroundings using AI.
We can generate it to look just like this.
Yeah, it'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, I was really interested in VR, especially at the beginning of the pandemic. There was a number of VR-related meetups and stuff that seems to have plateaued over the past couple of years, but I'm hopeful that something like Neuralink will actually be like the next step. It's very clunky to actually put on a headset, and there's a number of things you have to configure. If you want a good VR setup where it's driven by a PC, the standalone ones just don't have enough processing power to do the same level of video graphics and whatnot. But
there's competition coming into that market because Apple have just announced theirs, kind of leaked.
Yeah, we'll see.
Look, I've got the original first Oculus Rift. When I've used it for what I've used it for, I've loved it. Not for gaming. The gaming, there's just not decent games. But the more exercise side of gaming, I have liked. So there's a thing where you use these discs fly at you, either punch them or duck under them. It's a good workout. There's the boxing game, which is an unbelievable workout where you feel like you're in the ring. You need that feedback. So if you're hit, it feels like you're being hit.
Yeah.
Or it pushes your head back. But as a workout, it's fucking insane and it's fun. That's the only stuff I've really liked on it. And also and getting people to walk the plank and then pushing them over. But that's it. But I'm interested in it. It just feels like there isn't enough money in it for the developers to make the game. The boxing game I like is made by one dude on his own.
Yep.
It's not like you got Square Enix. Is it Square Enix at the company? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not like they've got hundreds of people working on single games yet. So I think maybe if we get to that point, I think it'll be interesting. Have you got a VR?
Nope, never done it.
Not even.
Never tried it.
Next time in the UK, I'll show you it.
All right.
You got to do. Have you done the walk the plank?
Oh yeah. The funny thing is, I did the walk the plank in 2002.
What?
Yeah, I know, right? This is actually not a new thing.
Were you just walking on a plank?
So it was when I was hunting for universities to go to when I was in high school. I went to the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, and they had one of the preeminent graphics departments, and they had a room about the size of the house that we're in right now that was their VR lab. And, this is multi-million-dollar equipment back then, but they let me go through a simulation, which it was a plank simulation over, it wasn't over, the one that you did was probably at the top of a building in a city. The one that they did was literally just over a pit. It was much more simple, but it was the same type of effect where you would feel like you would fall off.
Do you know this walk the plank thing?
Yeah, I've heard you talk about
it. I'm telling you, I'm not somebody who loves heights. You feel it. Mm-hmm. You believe you're up there. And I can do it. I can look under my goggles, I can see my floor, and then I can look up, and there's no way I'm jumping off the end of that plank. Fuck that. I just can't do it. I think I like the idea of VR. I kind of like the idea of VR in a world where we can make the podcast. We do this in person because you cannot replicate this conversation we're having over Zoom. It just doesn't work. It's different. It's a different conversation. The latency is different. You have a different emotional connection. Everything about it's different. I think that gap can be closed with VR. I believe it can be. So that's maybe. I tell you what, if it's ever available, we'll do that one first, you and I.
Absolutely.
Jameson, good to see you. Thank you for coming in. Appreciate everything you do. Appreciate you from episode 3 of What Bitcoin Did. Where do you want to send people to?
Well, the easiest way to find me is at lopp.net, lopp.net. And from there, you can find all my resources and Twitter account and so on and so forth. But I think the short version takeaway of a lot of this stuff, you seem to focus a lot on the dystopian aspects. I'm the techno optimist. I think that humanity is going to continue to keep stumbling forward, and there's not really too much use worrying about the million different apocalyptic scenarios that may or may not happen.
I will try and be more of an optimist. Thank you for everything you've done, not just for me, but in Bitcoin and just being a general badass. Appreciate you so much, man.